Hello and welcome to Wednesday Warfare, where I review NXT and AEW Dynamite back-to-back and try and figure out which show won for the week. It's good to be back here. I'm sorry that I missed last week's review on account of my illness, but I'm feeling better now and I'm glad to be back here because I think both shows this week were pretty darn good, but typically only one can win. As always, like what you like, don't be a dick, let's begin. NXT's opening match is a semifinal match in the Dusty Classic as MSK take on Legado del Fantasma. Great opening contest, lots of fun athleticism here. All I could think of when I was watching this match was the future of NXT's tag division seems to be in pretty good hands looking at what these two teams can bring to the table in this opening contest. Double blockbuster to Joaquin Wilde for MSK to advance to the finals. We'll find out who they're fighting in that final match later tonight. We had some promo packages throughout the night from the women who are going to be involved in the women's title match at Takeover Vengeance Day. First you have Mercedes Martinez, then later on Toni Storm, and then Io Shirai. I think they're all very well produced, very good stuff from all three of the ladies in those packages there. Then we go on to Xia Li versus Cora Jade, one of the latest NXT signees here. As the match begins, we see Kacy Catanzaro and Kayden Carter try to confront Xia because she's changed now, she's different, not the friend that they once knew, but she brushes them off and she makes very quick work of Cora here, just within seconds she wins here. Then afterward, Kayden approaches Tian Sha, the ringleader of this whole operation, and just starts shouting at her and repeating herself, saying, you know, this is not who Xia is, what have you done with her, what have you done with her, this is not who Xia is. Says that an awful lot before she's finally cut off. Lee takes out Carter, then Tian Sha grabs Boa by the neck, and then to appease her, Xia Li beats up Kacy Catanzaro as well. And so then they bow to her and everything, and that's how it ends. I'm liking this storyline more with Xia Li and Boa and their boss now. I watched the promo from last week, the animated promo kind of explaining her backstory. Very cool stuff. Very rarely do they delve into the supernatural in NXT, so I kind of like where this angle's going here. As far as Kacy and Kayden trying to intervene and save their friend, I can understand why Kacy's upset about this. I mean, Tian Sha is wearing a mask, and we know she hates those. Backstage, we see GM Willie Reegs enter his office, and Scarlett's in there waiting for him. She says that Karrion Kross wants a match with Santos Escobar next week, and Regal makes it so. In the ring, we see The Way in there. Now, last week, Johnny Gargano was attacked. His arm was attacked by Kushida, and this week we see Gargano in a wheelchair. Of course, Johnny gripes about, I love how Austin Theory carries him in the ring like a child too, that's pretty hilarious. So Gargano's griping about what happened, some really choice chants in the audience here like, you deserve it, or my favorite, Johnny Wheelchair. He says the title match with Kushida is off at TakeOver because he's hurt, and then Regal shows up to try and question why he's doing this. Johnny puts up an image of an x-ray of a very badly broken arm, and then Regal points out it's not even the correct arm, because your left arm's in the sling, but the x-ray says it's the right arm that's shown here, and he can't even name the bones that are broken. So Regal kind of calls him out on it, and he says, Johnny, you can either forfeit the championship or you can have Austin wrestle in your place tonight for the championship. And Johnny wants neither of those things. Meanwhile, Kushida has snuck up behind the group and is just standing there, and nobody notices him until it's too late. And Kushida attacks. He fights the belt with Gargano, the arm clearly not injured, and then Kushida kicks him and does the Bret Hart sell back into the wheelchair, which was great. This whole segment was just fantastic. My favorite part about this actually is when Gargano says, give me a couple weeks and I'll heal up. It'll be a beautiful day music video, a reference to Triple H's comeback in 2002, which was pretty freaking fantastic. So we segue from that bit into our next match. Is the last semifinal match in the Women's Dusty Cup as Candice LeRae and Indi Hartwell take on Shotzi Blackheart and Ember Moon. Lots of really entertaining double team moves from both teams in this matchup. One of my favorite spots in this actually is just before commercial break when Candice does a Hurricane Rana onto Ember from the top rope to the apron, and then Ember flies into Shotzi on the floor. In the end, Shotzi with a senton onto both Indi and Candice, pinning Indi to win. So she and Ember, I should say, go to the finals, and we see the face-off on the stage by the trophy with Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez. That is your finals matchup. And also, when they're doing that, Regal shows up once again, and he announces the winner of that tournament is going to get a shot at the women's tag titles, which is excellent. Yay, stakes! We had a promo with Timothy Thatcher and Tommaso Ciampa on the Grizzled Young Veterans in their Dusty Classic match tonight, and Tommaso says that Old Man Ciampa and Toothless Timmy will beat JYV's asses matches and go on to win the Dusty Cup on Sunday. Elsewhere, we see Santos Escobar being interviewed about the challenge from Karrion Kross. Doesn't seem too worried about it, but then we see Raul Mendoza and Joaquin Wilde walk in licking their wounds, and they want to apologize for losing, but Santos says, if you want to make it up for me, you should go and attack Karrion Kross right now. So we'll see how that develops. They show a hype package for the Finn Balor-Pete Dunne match at TakeOver, and then we see Austin Theory versus Kushida. Johnny Gargano at ringside with his arm still in a sling for reasons. It's a competitive match, but it ends in a DQ when Gargano super kicks Kushida while he's got Theory in the armbar on the apron. As the beatdown continues, though, Theory is pulled under the ring. Gargano pulls who he thinks is Theory out from under there, but it's Dexter Lumis instead. Lumis spooks both guys. Then we get a stereo submission moment here where Kushida's got the hoverboard lock on Gargano, and Theory is locked in silence by Lumis. And then as the babyfaces stand tall, we get the worst canned chants I've ever heard. It's like worse than some video games I've heard for Kushida and for Dexter Lumis. That really stuck in my craw. But the segment itself, the match was fine despite the DQ finish, and the Way won none of their matches this evening, but they were all very entertaining. We get another Imperium hype package, more about the impending return of Walter, and they're all really great guys. And then elsewhere backstage, we see Mendoza and Wilde have been torn apart by Karrion Kross, who tells the camera and to Santos Escobar he's going to do to him next week what he just did to his henchmen. Outside the building, a sleek Lamborghini pulls up, and it's Cameron Grimes behind the wheel. He starts throwing money at just anyone and everyone, basically. He gets on the microphone and says, well, he was out of action due to Timothy Thatcher a couple of months ago, started playing a bunch of video games, bought stock in GameStop, and then later Dogecoin. And you kind of know where this is going here. He's become a millionaire in the process. He has more money than he knows what to do with, and so now he repeatedly tells Regal to kiss his grits. He doesn't listen to anybody because he's the richest man in NXT. He rolls around in cash to close out the segment, and I loved it. I mean, this is a great new twist on Cameron's character. I want to see where like loaded Cameron Grimes is going to take us. I think there's a lot of great entertainment value, great humor to be mined from that. We see Johnny Gargano once again tonight, and this time he's being interviewed backstage. He says his match on Sunday is going to remind everybody why he's called Johnny Takeover, and that Kushida better prepare for the match of his life. In our main event, you've got GYV versus Ciampa and Thatcher in the last semifinal match of the Dusty Classic, the men's version at least. Ciampa's laid out for much of this match with a possible neck injury, and Thatcher's nose gets bloodied at some point here. Ciampa gets his comeback, but then he eats a ticket to Mayhem, and Drake and Gibson win clean as can be and make it to the finals for the second year in a row. We see a stare down with them and MSK by the trophy, and then before the show wraps up, we get a very interesting series of stare downs as they introduce they run down the match card for TakeOver this Sunday, and like for each one match, they keep going back to the stage, and oh, the wrestlers have rotated out, and they're doing the stare down with the referees and everything. They replay the one from the women's tag, one from earlier, but then they just then they have to stare down with Balor and Dunne, spotlights in the ring, signature taunt as he fade to black. I thought that was kind of a cool, neat way to end the show and do one final kind of like wrap up, talking about the pay-per-view or the TakeOver show, I guess. And yeah, it felt different, and it was nice, it was neat. AEW begins the TNT title match as Darby Allin defends against Joey Janela. It's a great opening match here. These guys beat the heck out of each other, pulling out many, if not all, of the stops, but in the end, Allin wins with a coffin drop from the top to win and retain. Yeah, that was a great match. Joey Janela can be kind of hit or miss, but I think this is one of his better, if not his best performance on Dynamite to date. We get a Jon Moxley promo, and now because the plot requires it, they can acknowledge he is the IWGP US Champion. He's holding the belt and everything. He says Kenta has been calling him out for months across the ocean. I'm like, come on, man. Kenta lives in Orlando. Who are you fooling? But he says that tonight's tag team match is just for fun. Elsewhere, we see Sammy Guevara confronting MJF. He brings a camera crew in and has the other members out of the Inner Circle locker room, accuses MJF of trying to take over the Inner Circle, but MJF flips it around on him, saying, no, you're the one who hates Jericho, and you're the one who's going to try and take over the Inner Circle. And basically, Sammy catches MJF trying to record him, trying to implicate him in saying something, and out of context, Sammy smashes the phone and punches MJF in the breadbasket and walks off. Things are boiling over here. I'm really interested to see how the power dynamic is going to shift, and we'll find out later tonight. Up next, Cody Rhodes and Nightmare family member Lee Johnson take on Peter Avalon and Cesar Bononi, formerly of NXT. Before the match, they show Brock Anderson, Arn's son, at ringside, and boy, does he look like an Anderson. I love this call where Tony Schiavone says he looks like Arn and Ole, and JR goes, oh lord. It's an okay match. I really appreciate Johnson's athleticism in this thing. The match ends when Peter goes for the martinis, but Lee moves out of the way, rolls Avalon up to win, and it's his first victory in AEW. He was 0-29 before that, and he's on the stage with the rest of the Nightmare family. Dustin Rhodes is there, QT Marshall and whatnot, and he seems very humbled by everything. He's very grateful for the Nightmare family, saying if you put in the work, then it always pays off. The Young Bucks are backstage being interviewed, but before they can speak, the Good Brothers show up, and Matt and Nick take umbrage with Gallows and Anderson, basically costing them their shot winning the tag team battle royal last week. Gallows and Anderson try to explain they were going for a different team. Matt's fired up now and says he wants to defend the tag belts next week against Santana and Ortiz. The Bucks and the Good Brothers try and smooth things over, but it's not entirely smooth just yet. Elsewhere backstage, Hangman Page being interviewed, but he gets cut off because that's what you do in AEW. Matt Hardy shows up and basically wants to celebrate their big tag team win from last week with some drinks at the bar, and so Page goes to leave, but he bumps into the Dark Order, and there's some awkwardness there. You hate to see John Silver feel so bad about himself and just beat himself up over what he's saying. Up next, Pac takes on Ryan Nemeth, and there's not much to say about this one. Pac just basically systematically destroys Nemeth, just beats him up the entire match, knocks him out, Black Arrow in the Brutalizer. Ryan makes a silly face as he taps out, and that's pretty much how it ends, so good for Pac. We get a recap of the Kip Sabian-Penelope Ford wedding, which was ruined by Orange Cassidy and Charles the Butler. Miro vows revenge. Then backstage, we see Chris Jericho getting ready for his match. MJF shows up finally. His ribs are taped up, and he's blaming Sammy Guevara for attacking him for no reason. They don't have much time to talk about, though, because we go to our next match as Jericho and MJF take on the Acclaimed. Chris and Maxwell became the #1 contenders last week after winning that tag team battle royal. Very interesting heel versus heel matchup here, but both sides do get cheered sporadically throughout the thing. Jericho almost gets beaten after a boombox attack, but he kicks out. Then some more sneaky work by the Inner Circle allows Jericho to hit the Judas Effect on Caster to win for his team. No time to celebrate, though, because Sammy Guevara shows up and drops this announcement. He announces he's quitting the Inner Circle, and then he leaves. He walks away, and then after the break, you see him leaving the building, so he needs to take some time off for himself. So big development for the Inner Circle. Sammy Guevara is out, MJF is in, and now there's no one in his way to stop his evil plans. At the bar, we see Matt Hardy pretending to drink with Hangman Page. You see him kind of dump his drink out behind Page's back. And he offers Page a contract to work with him or have Hardy as his manager, 30% cut and everything. And Page wants to sign it, but then as Matt turns his back to address the cameraman, saying, I'm doing this with the camera here because it's all on the record and everything. I do like, by the way, that the cameramen are treated like they're there and they know they're there. They're not invisible cameramen like we see in WWE these days. But anyway, as Hardy is acknowledging the cameraman, we see Page throw the contract away, pull out some other papers he happened to have in his coat, sign it, and he has Matt sign it as well. And Matt's very excited. He thinks he's got Page, but it's something else clearly. But I mean, it was a pretty clever move. I thought it was kind of funny how Page just threw the contract away. But how would Matt not know he's not signing his own contract? Man, do you know what I haven't seen in a while in AEW? Tony Schiavone in the ring interviewing Sting, but thank God they came through in the clutch this week and had that classic moment once again. But before Sting can talk, you know what's going to happen. It's a promo interruption by Team Taz. But this time, Taz is in a car, and we pan around to see Darby Allin stuffed in a body bag, and he's dragged through the parking lot by the vehicle, driven by Taz, which is a pretty cool visual. Sting goes to try and figure out what's going on there. You know, I wish they had a better way to show us that twist than the same old Tony Schiavone and Sting in the ring segment, but I think that the moment itself of Darby being dragged was pretty awesome to see. It's pretty shocking. We get a scene from earlier in the day with Kenny Omega golfing like a man who's clearly never golfed before instead of preparing for his big match tonight. He says he doesn't have to prepare because he never loses, which I thought would be famous last words. We then go to our first match in the women's title eliminator tournament as you got Thunder Rosa versus LEYLA HIRSCH. The whole tournament I'm very excited about, especially the ladies I've seen on the Japanese side of the bracket. This is a very strong competitive matchup here. Both ladies look good against each other. Very technical match here. And ultimately, Thunder Rosa ends up winning after hitting her finisher and advancing. But yeah, really good match here. Tony Schiavone interviews Jungle Boy, and Jungle Jack's got some words for FTR. He talks about how he had the fight of his life with Dax Harwood, but he made him tap out in front of the world. And the next time he gets a chance to confront FTR after their suspension, he's going to make the team his bitch. We go to our main event now. It's Falls Count Anywhere, no DQ. Last week they alluded it was going to be a lights out match, but that is not really acknowledged here this week, as Kenny Omega and Kenta take on Jon Moxley and Lance Archer. Kenta and Omega seem to have an uneasy partnership in this matchup here, but they are able to coexist. It's a big brawl from the get-go. We got trash cans, we got ladders, they fight into the crowd and back. At one point, we get a GTS onto Peter Avalon, and Kenny Omega slammed through his heart-shaped bed on the outside. Rough night for Peter here. They fight their way into the kitchen, and they're throwing potatoes, literally, and then back at the arena, Kenta with this big diving double stomp to Moxley from the stage to the ringside table, and if you watch it in slow motion, you can see Kenta's knee just rock the side of Moxley's head. It looked pretty snug. Archer looks to have Omega beat, but then the Good Brothers intervene. Jake Roberts gets in the ring, hits a short arm clothesline onto Anderson, but then Jake gets taken out. Kenny threatens a V-trigger onto him, but Moxley intervenes, and then he gets taken out. Finally, Archer hit with a one-winged angel after an assist getting picked up by the Good Brothers for Kenny to win for his team. What a wild main event that was, and something I didn't get to talk about last week because I didn't record, was just how crazy of a time we're in right now in 2021, where the partnership with Impact and AEW has now expanded to include New Japan. I mean, some brave new frontiers are being forged here in AEW, and I have to give them credit because they're doing something that like really no one else has been able to do on this scale for quite some time, and I think it's the potential for where they can go with this is very exciting. Time for me to decide which show won for the week, NXT or AEW Dynamite, and this week my choice is NXT. I think that it was a much stronger show overall than AEW. I think it had fewer weaknesses. I think AEW had some great moments too. I love the Darby Allin Joey Janela match. I think the women's match was great. The main event was wild, and seeing stuff with like Sammy Guevara and MJF where that's going to lead, that was pretty cool as well. But I think NXT just had better matches overall. I loved all the Dusty Classic matches, male and female. The character work with Gargano and Grimes, to me, put that show way over the top this week. But what did you think of NXT and AEW this week? I want to hear what you have to say in the comment section below. A quick little programming note and some disappointing news. I will not be reviewing Takeover Vengeance Day this Sunday. I'm still technically recovering from being sick, and considering how the Rumble review just took so much out of me and really sped up the process of me being sick, I really want to take it easy this weekend to prepare for the Elimination Chamber the following weekend, so there will be a review for that. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.